I'm here with Illah Nourbakhsh, who is a professor of robotics at Carnegie Mellon, and I understand you were also the former lead for robotics at NASA, which I'd like to ask you about as well. Dr. Nourbakhsh is a professor of robotics with a focus on human-robotic interface and on ethical issues in the development of robots. He's the author of Robot Futures and a second book called Introduction to Autonomous Mobile Robots. Thanks so much for talking with me.
Thank you for hosting me.
I have a very open-ended question, which would be to ask you what you would most want the public to know about the development of artificial intelligence and robots.
I think the thing that I care about most regarding artificial intelligence is that while it's true what we hear from the scientific peanut gallery, that artificial intelligence is exploding quickly, that it's changing fast and advancing, often that ends up causing us to talk about this idea of AI systems that are as smart as humans, and the fear that those AI systems may take over the world. Indeed, we have fairly famous folks like Elon Musk and Bill Gates and Stephen Hawking who've all said perhaps artificial intelligence is a sort of existential threat to humanity itself if these AI systems self-improve and decide they don't much care for us. The problem with this whole line of thought is that today it's science fiction. It's not the case that AI is developing in a way that's enabling it to have cognition or consciousness or that inner sense of drive and intention and goal seeking that we humans have. And unfortunately, by being turned toward this idea of AI as a singularity phenomenon, it distracts us from the ways in which artificial intelligence are actually potentially disrupting society in a negative way. So that's what I get really concerned about. And that current distraction, the ways in which AI today really does change society, is actually about power dynamics. It's about concentrating power in the hands of corporations and governments. Because AI makes it possible to analyze the behavior of millions upon millions of people, of you and of me, of all our friends, and to derive from that an understanding of how we behave and how to push our buttons, get us to buy what they want us to buy, get us to behave the way others want us to behave, at a level that humans have never been able to accomplish before. And so, in fact, it's funny. We think about AI in terms of its possible ability to take over the world and kill all the humans, but what it's really doing today, and what we're distracted from, is it's empowering and emboldening a few humans, captains of industry and captains of government, to have far more control over humanity than they ever dreamt that they would have before.
So you see the issue as who has the power and control over this amazing capacity that our machines are exhibiting.
It's interesting. The reason our machines are developing really strong capacity, the reason researchers work on that problem, is because of this thing that we often talk about called big data. We are collecting data at a rate that is unheralded. Everything like medical records have become electronic. Every tollway that you go through collects your driver's license plate number. Every time you do a search on the internet, it's collected and quantified and quantized and sold for money. Every Advantage card that you use to get a discount in a store collects information on everything you buy and then slices and dices that and sells it to make money to other companies who do marketing. And we've all heard of ironic cases gone awry, like when Target sent pregnancy test kit discount coupons to a woman whose father panicked. And in fact, there was a lawsuit there because Target had accidentally violated the privacy of the woman by learning. And it's interesting, today doctors will tell you that AI, machine analytics, looking at purchasing behavior, can predict the time of birth of a baby more accurately than a doctor. So that's the world we live in.
Is the major ethics issue one of privacy, or is it control that you're worried about in some future scenario?
So it used to be privacy in the sense that robots were able, and machines in general, were able to access data and do these reverse searches. You know, I remember as I grew up, we had yellow pages and white pages. Then suddenly the day came when it was all in a computer. But as soon as in a computer, you could do something very odd. With white pages, you could look up somebody's name and find their phone number. But you could never take a phone number and figure out somebody's name. As the instant that media became digital, it became possible to do something that was unbelievable before, that only the FBI could do, which was that reverse search. So there's an aspect of privacy that's interesting because when the information about us is digitized and online, computer systems can use it to do searches that usually don't make sense. We can have partial information about you and me online. Computers can take partial information, put it together, and figure out exactly who we are. So anonymity goes away. Because with 4 digits from our social security number, with maybe our zip code but not our street address, but then a type of car we drive and a couple of other bits of bobs of information, they can discover everything, jigsaw it together and get a complete picture. So that's the privacy side, but there's another side. And the other side isn't actually privacy, it's control, exactly what you pointed out. The control side is interesting because you can have advertisements now that have electric eyes in them. They can advertise to you and look at your facial expressions and your micro expressions and notice if you find the clothing on the billboard interesting. They can identify and characterize your rough age, your gender, your rough socioeconomic status from what you're wearing, and they can do hundreds of millions of experiments like this a year.
Where's this camera that's seeing me looking at the billboard?
It's a digital billboard with a camera in it that you can put on a sidewalk, on a building facing a sidewalk or a shopping mall. And what's interesting about that is the computer systems that do that collect data. It's just data, it's not even private data. But it's data that allows them to draw the kinds of conclusions humans couldn't draw before. Like the idea that men between thus and such age and thus and such age who wear sports jerseys are likely to buy beer if you advertise it in this way.
So it's giving power to the market to shape what we purchase and to shape our choices even. We may think that we have free choice,
Yes.
But it's influencing our sense of what our real choices are. I mean, tell me what's wrong. I guess what I'm probing for is what's wrong. What's wrong with that?
So if you think about marketing in general, marketing is about shaping people's desire. You create marketing prospects, you do advertisements on the television or online in an attempt to create desire. And you try and match created desire with the product that you produce. So if you make green lawn chairs, you're going to do everything you can to make people want green lawn chairs. And that's marketing, it's advertising. We don't consider that to be unethical. We don't consider that to be somehow unfair. But there are things we do consider unfair even today. For instance, the government says your advertisement can't be untruthful. Right,
of course.
You can't promise more than you can deliver.
We expect truth-telling.
We expect truth-telling. On the presidential politics side, it's the same story. Every focus group meeting is about testing marketing material to see if you can create desire for their candidate. You're not trying to produce a balanced view, but you're also not trying to be completely fictional because that's illegal. You're trying to get somewhere in the middle to emphasize the right parts of the story so that your vote goes to the candidate that's paying me for marketing. So that's regular marketing. Now, if we have marketing that is AI backed, what that marketing can do is instead of having a focus group with 30 people, it can run experiments on hundreds of millions of people constantly. So you're right, it doesn't feel very different, but the endpoint is interesting. The endpoint is that marketing system isn't coming out with one commercial for everybody to watch, or even 3 demographics to watch. It's coming out with a unique, bespoke commercial for you, based on your interests, based on your digital footprint online, and based on how you have responded to their prior marketing. So it's a slope, it's a slippery slope, but you get to the point where they are able to bespoke everything, all communication messaging for you. When Trump delivers an ad to you in that world, it's an ad only for Millie from Trump. And it'll be designed carefully so that it pushes all the right buttons to cause the emotional reaction that that AI system wants.
Does it know my name, and does that matter?
Yes, it does. And it doesn't matter, because even if it didn't know your name, it has so much information about you.
The ethical concern you have is well beyond the level of the individual. That's why I asked, does my name matter? The ethical issue you're raising is what kind of society do we want to be?
Exactly so.
As we shape population level desires.
That's right. It's interesting because the question is, what happens to the power relationship between government, business, and humanity, society? Is it the case that over time, we're going to see a shifting of power dynamics and power relationships? Will democracy be able to serve us as democracy if we live in a world with hyper-realistic marketing that basically divides and conquers us so fully that our vote is not a well-informed, balanced decision between knowledgeable sources, but necessarily the one alleyway we're being pushed into with very careful information feeding. If that's the case, what happens to democracy? What does democracy mean if we're so well manipulated, so effectively manipulated, that we aren't really showing free choice anymore?
So is that the domain where you've mentioned marketing and commerce, and you've mentioned government, and so is the primary ethics concern under the government rubric the shaping of our political choices through the marketing that's done to get our vote, or are you concerned about some other aspects of government control?
I guess I'm concerned about all aspects of government and organizational control. The thing that I find really powerful and emboldening are cases when I see community groups around a refinery in Philadelphia collecting data, trying to show how the air quality is degraded in their zone, and then pushing the government to take action. It's a power relationship in which the government is a servant to the people, and in which the EPA administration actually breathes a sigh of relief by saying, you know, we have so much pressure from below that we can push back on the pressure from above and actually make regulation that makes people healthier.
That's a wonderful example. I just want to make sure I understand it. You're saying that there is a way to use artificial intelligence that empowers from the grassroots up, and the example you gave is an AI or some kind of software system that is giving local citizens information about the water or air quality?
So I call it robotics rather than AI because
Okay.
it's actually sensors and effectors, it's air quality sensors that we actually distribute to citizenry in places like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. So there's a way for technology to empower people to make strong, rhetorically compelling narrative that forces those who are their servants to pay attention to the government. The problem with AI is as we collect data in the form of government and business entities, I fear that that power we have ground up to make change, to cause the world to become better in a socially positive manner, that power gets diminished by the very fact that you're concentrating a power relationship that's more stoic, with government on top, and therefore in bed with industry. So that's what scares me. It's not just privacy, it's not just pushing people's buttons for democracy, for the question of democratic vote. It's the day-to-day desire of people on the ground to be able to push for changes that make the world more equitable and more socially positive. But that's naturally repressed whenever you have tendencies or directions of power that actually concentrate wealth and concentrate power. And unfortunately, when AI is owned by the wealthy and the powerful, it will naturally concentrate wealth and power.
So you're trying to build sensors that can be read by ordinary citizens in their communities for an environmental purpose, for example.
Yes, the lab I run at Carnegie Mellon is called the CREATE Lab, and CREATE stands for Community Robotics, Education and Technology Empowerment. So every project we do takes a community of practice, from kindergarten teachers to people who have fracking, natural gas fracking sites in their communities, to garage mechanics. And we try and invent ways that we can hijack existing technology and empower local people and local community groups to have more power, to invert the power relationship between communities and all the other organizations we have.
So, Illah, for you, it's not really what AI can do, it's who's using it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for what purpose.
Absolutely.
It's the social systems and political and economic systems in which the AI capacities are integrated.
That's perfectly said. And the trick is everything that you just said and that I've been saying is a total tangent from the mainline argument, which is, oh, AI is going to be smarter than humans and then it's going to take over the world. That might happen in 200 years, I don't know. But that's not the problem that society faces today. Today we face inequality. We face digital literacy gaps that have massive racial and gender biases. And we're not fixing them. They're getting worse. In STEM education, the amount of money a woman makes is far less than man. It's just as bad as any other field. Same thing for African Americans versus Caucasians. Yeah. So we live in a society that's inequitable. And we can worry about AI taking over and killing us all, but that's so far in the future.
As we end, I would love, you've given a really riveting and expansive explanation of why this is an ethical problem, but I'd like to kind of see if there's a way to summarize that. This is a new topic for the Hastings Center. It's not exactly a bioethics topic if you define bio very, I don't want to say narrowly, but very specifically as emerging out of life science technologies. But yet, I think it's very important. It's going to impact human well-being. Your environmental example shows how it can directly affect human health.
Right.
So what's the argument that you might help me articulate about why this is appropriate for bioethics?
There actually is, I think, a really wonderful argument toward bioethics. If we think about if we go to the world of prosthetics and human-machine ensembles, we see there a space in which prosthetics, whether they're an exoskeleton that helps you walk, maybe you have a fragile hip, and you can walk, but if you walk, the problem is if you fall and break your hip. We all know that at some age levels, there's a significant decline in health following an injury like that. What if you had exoskeletons that don't walk for you so that you can still exercise your muscles and balance, but when you start falling, they catch you. They just don't let you trip.
I'd like one of those for my mom.
I would like one for my mother. So you can imagine all sorts of situations where you have human-robot couplings that actually empower a human. We talk so much about self-driving cars, but what we don't talk about is, what about people who have had the empowerment to drive themselves in a rural area all their life, but they're a little bit too old, they have a little bit too poor of a vision system. And what you want is you still want them to drive. You want the intellectual stimulation of that, but you want the system to protect them from the mistakes they may make because they have sensors that are starting to fail. That kind of human-robot coupling, it's a bioethics question. When does that human-robot coupling empower a human? When does it create dignity in the face of disease or long-term change? And alternatively, when does that human-robot coupling disempower a human? When is a spoon robot system that feeds somebody disempowering them because it starts telling them what to do and ordering them around? There's a massive, interesting biological ethics question there that has to do with how we design robot systems that couple to humans and become essentially part of us or extensions of us.
What would you say to? I know that you're creating robots that are very able to read human emotion and also to signal themselves, I assume, things that are friendly to the human in that part of the dyad. So if that gets really good, you brought up one ethics problem, which is that the robot might tell you what to eat.
Right.
But what if it gets really good and it's not? It's very relational and very helpful and people feel very bonded to their robots. Is there an ethics problem there?
Absolutely. One of the really interesting questions we face in society today, and you'll see this. So first of all, we have an aging demography issue worldwide. So we know that we don't have enough young people to take care of the old people. And in some countries, this is exacerbated because they have anti-immigration policies. They have xenophobia, like Japan, where they really don't want anybody to come in and take care of the elderly. So they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars developing robots to take care of the elderly. Now the question is, when will you be satisfied with that robot providing care in your place, in lieu of a human being? And when is that okay? To what degree does that robot have to appear to empathize with that human? And if that human is on a degraded intellectual path, if that human is suffering in some way with something like Alzheimer's disease, is it okay for the robot to be mediocre? Will you be okay with that? What does that tell us about the level of agency we imbue that human with?
Human.
Yes. If we're willing to let a mediocre robot take care of them instead of giving them true human contact, true social contact. And are we breaking bonds familially? Are we changing the relationship between a child and a parent precisely because a child doesn't need to be there to care for the parent anymore? So you can have a robot that's invented that takes care of somebody, you can empathize with them, you can start to have a phenomenological argument about whether the fact that it's faking it when it smiles at them, does it matter that it's faking it? It's just the algorithm that smiles. It says, I love you every night. Is that okay that it says, I love you? It's triggering emotional responses as if it were human. It's taking advantage of the fact that I can push buttons by saying, I love you. But it's a robot saying, I love you. Is that falsity? Is it a noble thing or is it ignoble? It's not clear. We don't have an ethical framework for analyzing a situation like that as designers and deciding what is the right design for an empathetic robot. Is it okay for it to fake emotion, to fake love? And how does that at the systems level affect society?
Yes.
The way we value the dignity of humans. That's also an open question.
Thank you so much. You've raised so many fascinating questions that we better start paying attention to.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks.